All right. Welcome everybody to Pro 150. We're in week 2. You've made it through the first week and we're well into the second week. Um, Hopefully it went well. I thought the discussion board was excellent last week. Thank you to all of you who participated, and for a few of you who have a few more posts to complete out, the 3 posts that were required. I encourage you to go in and do that. Obviously, we'd love to have your posts during the week so that we can give you feedback and interact with you, but it's better to have them in even late than not in at all, right? As we talked about grades and expectations last week, of course, the key to passing a class like this is making sure to complete all your work. I do accept late work, so go ahead and get in and get those posts done. Even at a discounted score, they'll help you to pass the class. So hopefully you felt like the board was good last week. This week we've got another good discussion board topic. We'll go over it here in just a minute. Before we get to that point, I do want to mention that grades are completed for week 1. They were completed last night. If you have any questions about your grades or about comments that I made, go ahead and zip me a quick email. I'd be happy to discuss it. And if you have completed something on time and don't have a grade for it, please let me know right away so that we can get that corrected. Every once in a while mistakes are made, so I encourage students to double check my grading, double check my feedback to make sure that they've got what they expect. And if you've got any questions about how something was graded, you should ask either way, because sometimes it can be a great learning experience as far as knowing expectations going forward for future assignments and discussions. So this week's discussion board, get this PowerPoint fired up here. So we should be looking at a PowerPoint that starts with interview, and basically this is what we're going to be doing for the discussion board this week. We're going to conduct a short interview. It can be with a family or friend, somebody that's convenient to do it with. Preferably an adult, preferably someone who has a job and a workplace that we can ask them questions about. So like I say, it can be a family or friend, but make sure that they've got a workplace environment that they can describe, and needs to be an adult individual. So that should be pretty straightforward. Anyway, we're going to do a short interview with them. You're going to get some answers to some real basic questions, nothing too intense, nothing too hard. Just a couple quick questions about how effective they feel their communication at their work is going, whether or not they feel like that communication is good or bad, and what makes certain communication good and what makes certain communication bad. And then what are some things that they would suggest to improve communication in the workplace. So just a couple short questions. Shouldn't be a long interview, shouldn't be a difficult task, but for some of you, I understand that this is going to be a little bit of a challenge. You've got to go find somebody, if there's not somebody in your household that you can do this with, and maybe have a quick phone conversation or a quick email conversation regarding these questions. So make sure and cite the interview, make sure and reference the interview so I know who you interviewed. You can refer to them just by a first name. You don't have to disclose a full name for this particular discussion board if you're concerned about disclosing that. So that's the discussion board. That's the main part of the discussion board, is that interview. We need, this week, different than weeks prior, we need 3 peer responses this week as opposed to just 2, right? So instead of having 3 total posts, we'll have 4 total posts this week for full credit. Still need to get that main post in by tomorrow night at midnight for full credit. Got to still have a couple different days of participation on the board. And as I mentioned earlier, the board is a place within our responses and also within the main post where we can demonstrate that we did review the session, right? That we reviewed the recorded session, which is a minimum expectation of the course. And it's also a place where we can demonstrate that we read the articles that were assigned. This week's discussion board has 2 different articles. They're a little bit longer this week, but there are only 2. And the discussion board is the place where we demonstrate that we read those articles and demonstrate that we paid attention to the material that was associated with the session and the articles assigned. Okay. So if it's clear that you didn't read anything or review the session, that's something that I can discount your score for. I'm not anxious to do that. It's just a place where we want to see, like I say, like I've said, you demonstrate that you've done the minimum requirements of the class. The only thing that you have for this class is the discussion board, right? Some checkpoints on a daily basis. But the checkpoints are such a minor issue. The discussion board needs to be a more substantial and substantive platform in this class because it takes the place of assignments and assessments. And so minimum expectation is that you can follow the instructions and also demonstrate that you've reviewed the session and read the material. Tonight we're going to go over the material, so if you listen to the session, you'll have a good idea of what these articles are about. Hopefully I don't go into them in such detail that you feel like it's a complete repeat when you go to read the articles. That's not my intent. My intent is just to discuss some high points from each one of the articles and some interesting tidbits that I thought were interesting from reading those, some different ways to think about things. Because after all, in a class like this, if we're going to talk about communication, something that you've probably heard about and learned about in the past, we want to make sure and point out some things and bring up some different talking points that are potentially things that you haven't thought about or ways that you haven't thought about communication. And specifically for tonight, we're going to talk about two very important aspects of communication. One is being an effective listener, and the other article has to do with controlling your emotions. And both are keys, okay? Both are keys to effective communication. Like we discussed last week, one of the first things, if I were to ask somebody, what makes somebody an effective communicator, most times I would get the response, somebody that knows how to speak well, somebody that's a good orator, somebody that's good on their feet, can use words to effectively describe something, right? And as we talked about last week, and as we'll continue the conversation this week, effective communication has a lot more to do with whether or not there's understanding, whether or not there's an ability to affect change or motivate some kind of change in behavior. If it doesn't motivate or affect any kind of change or in behavior, then it was probably ineffective communication. And if it doesn't, at least at a minimum, get to a point where there's understanding, once again, then effective communication hasn't occurred. So two critical things to effective communication and to that understanding and that change that we've talked about are the points of these articles. One is that you're a good listener in a situation where you're communicating back and forth with someone. And secondly, that you are able in a situation where you're communicating with somebody to control the emotions that will always happen. So it's not wrong to have emotions. It's not that you have an emotional problem if you feel different things as you communicate with somebody. In fact, that can be a very good thing. If you can contain your emotions, if you can process your emotions, they can work in your favor when it comes to communicating with somebody. You can be better at effectively connecting with people if you have emotion. But the flip side is emotion can derail a conversation if it gets in the way of you effectively communicating. It might be a situation where you're not able to verbalize what it is that you think because of different emotions that are taking place. It might be that you say things that you don't really mean out of anger, right, and an emotional state. And we've all been in a situation, I think, where we've either witnessed that from someone that we love or know, or even ourselves have been the person who in emotion was ineffective at communicating what it is that we truly think. Sometimes even say, regrettable things, obviously, when we allow our emotions to control how we're talking or speaking with someone. Couple quotes for tonight that I wanted to discuss. Okay, so a couple things that I think are reflective of important aspects of communication. So first of all, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. The point of this is many times in sales that if you're trying to get across your point, or if you're trying to sell somebody on an idea, it doesn't have to necessarily be a product that you're trying to sell, but we're always trying to sell our ideas to other people, right? And if you're in a situation where you're trying to do that and you completely ramrod your information and your side of the story and your perspective down someone's throat or your product, we tend as humans to kind of back away from something like that. Most people don't want a high pressure sales situation. Most people want to connect with someone, to feel like they can trust them, to feel like that person understands what it is that they want and need. And then once that understanding happens, then once again, we're able to affect some kind of change or motivate some kind of action. So if you're a salesperson, which all of us at some point in our lives are a salesperson, right? Whether or not we do it for our career or whether or not we're trying to sell our kids on acting differently or behaving better or changing their actions, right? We're all trying to sell ideas in our through our communication. And it's very difficult to sell our ideas or even sell products, literally, if we don't learn how to connect with people and have that understanding. So we've talked about the basic tenets of communication being understanding and then affecting some kind of change or action. Is a perfect example of this quote, which is, "No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care." It's difficult to affect that change, right? We might have an understanding, but it's difficult to affect that change if we can't connect in some way or have somebody understand or be validated or communicate some kind of empathy or sympathy for their situation, or at least at a base level, like I say, some kind of understanding of what it is they're trying to accomplish. Let me give you an example of that. When we have managers in a situation at work, okay, let's say we all work at Walmart today. We're in a manager meeting where our supervisor is discussing some new policy changes. And at the end of every single time he talks about policy changes or she talks about policy changes, she says something flippant like, let's do a great job today smiling, being happy, and promoting Walmart, to our customers and making them feel great about being a Walmart customer. And, she always says that at the end. It's a nice little line. It's kind of the management, line that we hear all the time. But you don't personally feel like that manager understands your situation, cares about you at all, or even knows that you exist. Okay. If they don't know you at all or know you very little, they don't care if you exist or come across as that if they don't care if you exist and don't really have any kind of sense of care for you, it becomes difficult for most of us. Now, some people can overcome this and it's, that's admirable. Most of us have a difficult time overcoming that and seeing past that to be able to follow somebody in a managerial role. We'll do the base minimum not to get in trouble, but as far as ever going over and above to make them, to impress them in any way or to really try to do our best job, probably not going to happen, right? And most of us have been in a job at some point where we've had a difficult time relating to or appreciating somebody who has a supervisory or managerial role over us, right? Some people get in that spot and kind of power gets to them and they just are kind of fake. They're not very genuine in how they communicate. And they require a lot of us and want us to do a lot, but we don't have a sense of any kind of like I say, care. And without a sense of care, it's difficult to feel motivated to accomplish what it is that they want us to do. Now, like I say, most of us will, do just what we have to keep for preservation sake, right? To keep our job, not to get in trouble, to stay off the radar. But as far as going over and above that, a lot of times a manager or a supervisor can be a lot more effective in motivating us to do a little bit better or be a little bit better at our workplace if we feel like they care in some way and that they understand us and are sympathetic or empathetic to our feelings and what our wants are. So keep that line in mind, regardless of whether or not, it's a famous quote for sales, like I say, but it's something that applies to any time we're communicating ideas and trying to accomplish understanding or action from someone else. And we're, if you think about it, we're always trying to do that, right? When we communicate, there's usually something we're trying to accomplish as far as some kind of understanding at a base level. And then a lot of times we're trying to get somebody to take some kind of action or change in some way. Another, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. This of course applies to a lot of different aspects of life. It's one of my favorite quotes though, and it definitely applies to effective communication. If we are the type of person that thinks that we're a decent communicator, a decent speaker, and so we always end up winging things, we don't ever prepare for what it is that we're going to try to communicate to somebody else, what ends up happening is we are able to speak, right? Because we're a gifted speaker potentially. But as far as staying focused on what it is that we're trying to communicate, getting the right understanding accomplished, and then motivating the right behavior afterward, it can be very difficult, even for somebody who's a very, somebody who really excels at speaking. Okay. So what do I mean by this? Well, if we don't put a little bit of preparation into and thought into what it is that we're truly trying to accomplish, how it is that we're going to truly speak and connect to our audience, right? It's the whole know your audience thing. And then sometimes it really helps in preparation to visualize or practice you actually accomplishing what it is that you want to try to communicate. So just some ideas of preparation when it comes to communication. One of the things that people talk about when it comes to therapy for somebody who suffers from some anxiety is to visualize you accomplishing what it is that you're going to do before you do it, right? And actually talking through it and kind of walking through it in your mind so that when you get into that circumstance, you have less anxiety about it. Well, most people, okay, even if you don't suffer from a mental illness of anxiety, most people suffer from some anxiety about speaking in front of people and communicating sometimes, to groups especially. Well, this whole preparation, visualization, putting effort in beforehand can alleviate some of that. It doesn't necessarily eliminate it, but it can allow you to cope better with those fears and anxieties that most of us have about communicating in front of people. Okay? Preparation. The next line is facts tell, stories sell. It's one of the early mantras that I heard when I got into the insurance sales business back about 16 years ago. So I was a young kid at BYU finishing my degree, and I took an internship with Northwestern Mutual, which is a great life insurance company, a big life insurance company. Well, they have a fairly large, national internship program where they recruit every 3 or 4 months new people to new teams and just see if they can make it, selling insurance basically. And it's a good opportunity to kind of get an idea of whether or not sales is a good idea for you, but it also allows you to learn a little bit about the insurance and investment industry as well. So good opportunity for me, but I had a really difficult time with selling people on ideas. I feel like I was fairly effective at giving information, right? And I had a very astute and wise manager once tell me, Dave, facts tell, stories sell. And his point was, you can talk about facts until you're blue in the face with someone, and frankly, it doesn't matter how impressive those facts are. It'll probably not be very successful at selling whatever it is that you're trying to sell. However, when you connect with somebody, and again, there's that word connection when it comes to communication, we're trying to connect. When we connect with somebody through some kind of story, the best kind are personal, but they don't always have to be personal. They can just be about anything. They can be any kind of story. People tend to relate to some kind of story, a real life story. So if you're selling a piece of furniture and you're talking about all the specifications of the piece of furniture, and then you say something effective, hey, my brother bought this couch a few weeks ago and he has just been over the moon about it. He can't stop talking about how comfortable this couch is and how wonderful this couch has been over the last few weeks. He's never had a couch this nice. I could have spent 30 minutes talking about all the specifications of that couch, and that little story that I just told about my brother and having the couch and how impressed he was with it will go a lot further to helping that person feel comfortable and confident in making a decision to move forward. And so just keep that in mind when it is that you're, once again, trying to sell ideas or communicating or trying to be an effective communicator with others. Sometimes, we get so focused on the facts and trying to understand the facts and communicate the facts that sometimes we overlook, trying to connect with somebody. And we never want to underestimate the value and the effectiveness of stories, right? And it's not to manipulate, right? We're not trying to tell stories to manipulate, but if they apply to what it is that we're trying to communicate, we definitely should share, right? And like I said, they don't have to be personal. but sometimes the most effective ones are. So you just have to use discretion in what kind of situation makes sense to use personal stories versus which ones don't. So once again, we talk about parenting every once in a while, but this is an area where sometimes you might tell your kid something till you're blue in the face that you want them to do, and if you just sit them down and take a few minutes sometimes and tell them a story about yourself or a sibling or your parents or a good friend of yours that dealt with a situation or got in harm's way because of a certain action, something like that can stick with somebody a lot longer than just getting yelled at over and over again or getting corrected over and over again with the same words, right? Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, or please do this, please do this, please do this. For some children that works great. For most, a little bit of some story to help them remember and to help them understand the why, right? And the importance of whatever it is that you're trying to communicate will really sell the idea and sometimes close the deal to help them change. Sometimes it won't help motivate them at all, but it's definitely worth a shot. And in a workplace environment where you're trying to sell ideas to each other as colleagues, where you're trying to sell ideas to a manager or as a manager to your employees, trying to sell the idea of working harder or working better, more effectively, whatever it is, or whether or not you're literally selling things to customers, all of these can be enhanced by having some kind of story that helps the effectiveness of your communication. Okay. Facts tell, stories sell. Another quote: effective teamwork begins and ends with communication. Most work environments now require some kind of teamwork, even if you're a coder, right? So you work in IT and you just do coding and you just think you're going to be in front of a computer all day and won't have to interact with people. Reality is there are hardly any business situations now, any careers where you don't interact with other people, right? Most all careers are going to require you to interact with other people. And if you really want an effective team or to be part of an effective team and enhance an effective team, communication will be a big part of that. Okay. Just like spouses, just like boyfriends and girlfriends, just like siblings, if they can effectively communicate with each other, they can enhance that relationship significantly. It's the same with a team. They can enhance their connectedness, their buy-in with each other. You see a lot of these movies about sports teams, right? They connect, they're motivated, but part of that is almost always part of that is their ability to communicate one with another, communicate and connect with a coach maybe, but also one with another as well. To be unified, right, in a purpose. And being unified in a purpose can be started by leadership, right? But then it needs to be perpetuated by the participants, right? Whoever's on the team. So if I'm on a retail team on the sales floor with Walmart, and I have a very good relationship with the other associates, we're going to work as a team to accomplish what it is that we're, our goal, right? Much better than if we're just all trying to do our own job and none of us are trying to help each other out. That can be an environment that's really toxic, right? Because no one's helping each other. No one's happy to be there. No one's trying to assist each other in trying to get their work done or trying to be helpful with another. And that just turns into a pretty bad, negative work environment. So effective teamwork begins and ends with communication. Constantly talking isn't necessarily communicating. Now, we've alluded to this many times the last few weeks. Last week specifically, I tried to make sure one of the main themes of last week was to make sure that you all understood that when we talk about effective communication, we're not just talking about speaking, right? So in the very, very narrow sense, most of us will think, well, if you're an effective communicator, you must be good on your feet in front of people. And we've talked about how that's not effective communication. It can be a part of it, but it's a very small part of it in the grand scheme of things. We're trying to create understanding and then affect change or motivate change. And those things require a lot more than being able to speak and use words. And some people who speak a lot get to a point with others, okay, the listeners, the other parties, where other parties become kind of numb to them always talking too much and so much that they start to tune them out, right? We've probably all had a friend or family member that talks so much that we get to a point where it's difficult to pay attention. It's difficult to focus on what it is that they're trying to say because they talk so much. And in fact, a skill that all of us can probably improve on, especially in our interactions with others, is how to make some things that we talk about a little bit more efficient, right? And we don't need to cut them down to where we're having a text conversation with people in our, in how we talk. I mean, that could get kind of silly, right? We're not trying to abbreviate everything to the point where we can communicate quickly and so fast that things just get kind of silly. But the flip side is we can also cut out some of our repetitiveness. We can get right to the point sometimes if we need to respect other people's time, and use details wisely, right, in how we tell about situations, as opposed to, always telling too much detail and always going too far with what it is that we're trying to say. Some of us get very good at speaking, and then we end up talking too much, right? It's one of those things that we have to be cognizant about and really try and effort being a little bit more efficient in how we talk about certain things, right? Or we can risk tuning people out because we say too much. Okay, and then the final quote, that's just kind of a silly small quote: you cannot not communicate. Even if you choose not to speak, even if you choose not to listen, even if you choose not to try to interact with others, even by not saying anything, right? Some of the most potent communication is nonverbal, right? So even if we choose not to communicate, sometimes that's a very potent means or mode of communicating a message to somebody. When you're upset with somebody and you don't respond to them, sometimes that effectively communicates something more than if you were to say something, right? But the point is, we can't avoid communication, right? We all could be in a situation where we say, well, we just don't like to communicate. We just don't like to talk to people. We just don't like to interact. We're kind of introverts, right? Many of us naturally very introverted. And you might say, well, I'm more than most, so I don't really apply to this. I really do, disdain speaking with other people or interacting with other people. And my comment or response to that would be, fortunately or unfortunately for you, we've got to get to a point, even if we really fear communicating with other people, where we can cope with that communication, because it's so critical to so much of what we do. If nothing else, just with our family relationships, right? People we love, anybody that we love or have some kind of relationship with, it requires some kind of communication, and at least a base level of communication understanding, in order to enhance and maintain the relationship that we have, right? So you can leave this class and say, hey, had a class on communication, and there are some different things that we can work on at the workplace, but there's also a lot of these things that we can practice at home with relationships that we have outside of our workplace as well. All right, so let's talk about these two articles. There's quite a bit of information in both of these articles, as I mentioned. The first article is a Forbes article from a few years back, with an individual talking about 10 ways that we can improve our listening skills. And she does a great job. This author does a great job talking about the ways that we can do a better job with listening. And there are a lot of these lists online. You could find a dozen of them if you searched out for them, but a lot of them would have some of these same themes. So I appreciate that she's got a pretty comprehensive list of different things that we can do a little bit better at in order to become a more effective communicator, right? Not necessarily just a listener, right? But listening is such a key part of communicating, like we've talked about, that we can enhance our communication skills by learning how to be a better listener. So she says at the beginning of this article, genuine listening has become a rare gift. Interesting line. Genuine listening has become a rare gift. Talks about how at work and at home, both, it helps to build friendships and careers. It saves money in marriages. It's just an interesting article. So a couple of the things that I just wanted to point out on this one. First of all, she talks about how, just at a base level, you face the person that is communicating to you. And we can't always expect this of other people, right? And there are reasons why some people just don't like to make eye contact. But she just basically says, look, we're in Western culture. It is absolutely expected that if you're trying to pay attention to somebody, that you'll at least look in their direction. Not that you're going to be intensely staring into their eyes the entire time, potentially, right? Sometimes we can be over attentive and look crazy, and that's number two. But at least our face is, we're facing somebody and we're giving them eye contact. And she talks about how you can take breaks from that eye contact, but we've all been speaking to someone that's kind of fidgety, or that's taking care of something, or looking at a device, or looking off into the distance, and we don't know what they're paying attention to. And for them, they might really be listening, but it's hard as a communicator with that person, or somebody speaking with that person, to really feel validated, right? Feel understood, because you get a sense that they're not really paying attention. And that's frustrating. For most people, that's frustrating, to not feel like somebody's paying attention. So how do we avoid that as a listener? We make sure that we make face contact, we face them and we make eye contact. The next thing I thought was really interesting, she says we need to be attentive but not too attentive. Okay, so we're trying to make sure that somebody knows that we're paying close attention to what they're saying, but we're not so attentive that it makes somebody feel nervous or awkward, or like we're just really too intense, right? And I think we've all had a few examples of that, maybe more on the side of somebody who just acts distracted, right? Like we talked about it in the first one. But I've also had the situation where I feel like people are overly attentive. And it almost gets you to a point, you almost get to a point with somebody who's overly attentive where you feel like they're trying to get you to be done with the conversation sooner, right? It's almost like they're being impatient. And so even if they're not, that's just something to understand as a listener, that if we act overly excited or overly attentive or overly intense, that might come across like we're anxious for them to wrap up, right, and be done, because that's what sometimes people do, right? So we could incorrectly make the assumption as a communicator that somebody who is listening is just anxious for us to be done, when that might not really be the case. But we as a listener need to understand that and be cognizant of the fact that we need to be careful not to be too attentive. Be attentive, just not too attentive. Okay. And she points out we just need to look relaxed, right? Calm, relaxed, but attentive. She talks about making sure that we have an open mind, making sure that we go into a conversation being willing to be accepting of whatever it is that's going to be communicated to us. Not that we agree with it. Okay. We don't have to agree. We don't have to believe the same way, but that we'll have an open mind and be accepting of somebody, even if it's very different, as far as their opinions are concerned. This is a great skill set to have, especially in a workplace environment. If you have a colleague and the very first time you meet them, you are very closed to differences that they have from you, as far as how they communicate, what they look like, different culture differences, what they verbalize, what they say to you. That can really create, obviously, some friction and a wedge that can make your workplace environment, once again, very difficult. Where if you come from the other side, and right off the bat you tell yourself, hey, I'm going to have an open mind. I'm going to keep an open mind with this individual, no matter what they say or do. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Those kinds of things, that kind of attitude, can help you to develop good friendships with people who are different, right? Because everybody is. And it can also help you to deal with supervisors and managers who, at some point they're going to make you, there's the potential, let me just say that, there's a potential for managers and supervisors to make you upset, right? And to make you feel frustrated. That potential is greatly lessened if we feel like we give them the benefit of the doubt and try to understand where they're coming from, as opposed to always trying to second guess what they're doing, and always taking it in a negative light, of course. So just kind of an attitude thing on the open mind. Sometimes she talks about visualizing, and sometimes in a conversation it helps if you're listening to somebody to create a kind of an image of what they're talking about, so that you can really see what it is that they're trying to say. This is probably the most this is probably the one that's most similar to trying to walk in their shoes, right? So they're describing a situation, And if you're really efforting the listening process, you can maintain eye contact and you can kind of visualize what it is that they're trying to describe or talk about. And that will help you to empathize, sympathize, and really come to a better understanding of what it is that they're trying to communicate, make you a better listener, right? No interruptions or solutions. This is something that males tend to have a hard time with. They try to solve problems for people and try to be problem solvers. And sometimes they interrupt what somebody's trying to describe, a situation somebody's trying to describe to try to solve an issue. And many times, this person describing the issue doesn't want their problem solved at all. They just want somebody to listen, right? So it becomes a frustrating situation where one side is trying to solve the problem, kind of interrupting the thought or interrupting what it was that somebody's trying to communicate, and the other person is frustrated because they didn't want their problem solved. They just wanted a listening ear, an understanding ear. Okay. The other thing that happens many times in conversations is we get in a situation where it almost feels like a contest of who is going to kind of get the upper hand in the conversation, and you get into these conversations with people where you feel like you're getting cut off or they're finishing your sentence for you, or just acting like they don't, like they can understand you before you've even had a chance to really fully describe what your situation is. And nobody wants a listener, right, when you're trying to express yourself and describe a situation, to do that. They just don't. So be careful as you're listening and trying to practice being a good listener, that you don't cut somebody off, you don't finish their sentences, and that you don't interrupt them with solutions when reality is they might just need a listening ear and an understanding ear more than anything, which is what we usually need. We want to be validated. We want a sense of validation. We don't want a sense of this person's going to tell me how I feel for me, cut me off, be impatient, and try to solve my situation before they even understand what it is that I'm trying to say, when really I was just trying to accomplish some understanding and maybe just vent, right? Didn't need a solution. I just needed to be able to vent. One of the things that she talks about is that you can await a pause in what they're saying to clarify, right? Instead of clarifying and interrupting them to clarify, wait till there's a pause, a natural pause in what it is that they're trying to say, and then back it up if you need to ask, to be able to clarify something. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting is that you ask to clarify and you ask to understand. You don't ask a question that could potentially derail what it is that somebody's trying to say. And she gives a great example of somebody, talking through a conversation about a really bad situation that happened, and they mention somebody's name. And you interrupt them by saying, "Oh, that's crazy. You ran into so-and-so? How are they doing?" Well, you've just effectively taken what it was that they were trying to communicate to you and derailed the conversation, right? Because you've asked a question that didn't ask to understand, you didn't ask to clarify, you asked them to talk about something that wasn't the point of their story, right? And this takes a little bit of skill and effort and understanding to make sure and be patient with a question like, "Hey, how is so-and-so?" until after they've fully been able to express what it was that the point of their conversation, the point of what they were trying to describe. And then when they're done with that, hold that a question where you are going to go a different direction with it, even if it applies, where you're going to try to take it a different direction. Wait for those questions until they're fully done, which was kind of an aha moment for me, because it's one of those things where you just, unless you think about it, you're like, oh, I probably do that all the time. I'm trying to act engaged. I'm trying to be a good proactive listener, active listener. And sometimes I probably derail what it is that somebody's trying to say, the thought that they have, by, asking a question that I'm anxious to know, right? I'm curious to know. That can make somebody feel unappreciated, or make them feel like the thing that they were trying to describe or the situation they were trying to communicate isn't important to you, even though that's not what you meant to have happen. That can sometimes be the case. You want to make sure and have a sense of how they feel, right? If they're trying to describe a situation where they felt a certain way, we want to walk in their shoes once again. We want to try to feel with them, and this isn't perfect. This isn't something we can feel the same emotion that they are, but it probably is. Most of us, part of our humanity, right, as human beings, is that we tend to have feelings, right, about situations and about circumstances when people describe them to us. And one of the things that she points out, and I think is great, is if you have certain feelings, right, that you should mention it. If you feel sad about a situation or you feel happy about a situation, you should celebrate with them, or you should, you know, express the fact that you have sadness for about a situation. Once again, that helps people feel connected. It helps people feel validated when you are expressing some kind of feeling associated with what it is that they're trying to talk about. There's a study recently that was done that said that if you eat a similar food as somebody else, they tend to accept whatever it is that you're trying to sell them on, or any kind of idea that you have, better than if you guys are eating something different. Just a test that was done, a test on psychology that I thought was interesting. I heard on the news the other day. So eating the same thing, the exact same thing, ordering the same thing off a menu helps that person connect. Even if it is subconsciously, it helps them connect. And even more, I think, effectively is if somebody's expressing a certain feeling and you express that you can feel that same feeling too, uh, and be genuine about it, sadness, happiness, whatever kind of feeling it is, that helps there to create a connection. And then communication can be enhanced, right? Whenever there's connection, communication can come up a level, right, and become more effective. We want to give them feedback, right, but we want to wait for good opportunities to give feedback. We don't want to interrupt. And we want to make sure that we're paying very close attention to the nonverbal cues that are happening in a conversation, right? So after you read through all this list and read through this article, you'll probably get to a point where you'll say, wow, active listening really does take a lot of effort. And there are a lot of things and consideration to think about, and a lot of things that you could practice in your conversation with somebody else, tomorrow, the next day. You could try to consciously effort, right, different aspects of your listening and try to improve how you communicate with people through your listening. And any one of these things, doing a little bit better job at any one of these could make a huge difference. It could be the difference of a relationship, that's kind of strained, improving, or a great relationship getting even better, or a new friendship, that wouldn't have been formed if there wouldn't have been a good, uh, effective communication that had occurred. We end up talking to many people, interacting with a lot of people, right? Day in and day out. The people who we remember and want to continue having conversations with are people who we feel validated by and empowered by, because they are good listeners and they know how to connect, right? Those types of people we seek out, and we want to communicate more with them, and we want to be around them because they build and lift and help support us, right, when we are communicating. Okay, so just something to think about, something to try and improve on. We all can do a little bit better job. The other article, as I mentioned, talks about emotions, and this is probably something that you don't think about in terms of communication, just like you might not have thought about listening. Emotions can, as I mentioned earlier, can completely derail a conversation or derail communication going on between two people. And the easiest example is, you know, you can have a situation where, if you've got kids, your child does something that's infuriating because you've told them a million times not to do it, or it puts them in harm's way, and all of a sudden your emotions start to get intense, right? And you yell or you fire off some kind of negative comment that really isn't how you feel, but once again, just in the heat of the moment, comes out incorrectly. And those types of things can do a lot of damage. They can be highly ineffective, to motivate change and to connect with somebody. And it's important for us to always assess where our emotions are. One of the examples that one of the authors that we'll look at in a future week in this class talks about is an interaction that he had with his son on a plane. The son he had just bought the son a very nice jacket, right? So the son's wearing this jacket, gets on a plane, is starving, and the person on the flight attendant offers a meal. It must have been breakfast time, and they get some pancakes with syrup. Well, the son opens the syrup packet, and the syrup just goes all over the front of his jacket. And it appears to the dad that he didn't even notice, right? And this infuriates the dad because he just spent a lot of money on this brand new, very nice jacket, and it's like the son doesn't even care, right? He's so interested in eating his food, he doesn't even notice it. So his blood starts to boil. He kind of wants to, he feels like he wants to, get upset with him. So a little bit later, he because he's an author when it comes to communicating and thinking about emotions when it comes to communication, he took a step back, and some moments later he asked his son, did you notice that you got some syrup on yourself, in a just a very calm, matter of fact way. And the son looked down, saw the syrup on his jacket, and just started sobbing, just started crying. Had no idea that he had gotten syrup on his new jacket, and no idea if it was ruined or if it would be okay. And of course, his dad's saying, "Yeah, of course it's going to be okay," and just consoling him and helping him out, but just had not even noticed. He was hungry. He's a teenager. He just didn't even notice that that had happened. And so it changed a situation from a situation that could have been really deconstructive, right? Could have made the son really angry that the dad was angry, not knowing that the son didn't even know what happened, right? That makes us, when we get accused of something like we did it on purpose or that we're careless when it really wasn't that at all, that makes us frustrated, right? That makes the communication break down. But when somebody's trying to be understanding and then consoling, like what happened in this situation, it was constructive. It enhanced the conversation. So just an example of getting outside or away or removed from emotions, and how if we can get removed from that and evaluate something with a level head, a lot of times we'll react to a situation or communicate in a situation very differently. Now, some of you have talked about on the discussion board about one of you, for example, I remember talked about your boyfriend who's a guard, a security guard, and one of the thoughts that I had in that situation is you can have situations where emotions run very high. One of the things we have to be careful is, as a security guard, right, is to stay, to be firm, right, to communicate that something's not right or needs to change or somebody needs to stop or somebody needs to go, or those types of things, but we need to do it in a way that's clear and calm, even though it can be a tense situation. And that's a skill, right? That's a skill. That's something that probably takes some practice. If you're a dispatcher, a 911 dispatcher, you probably have to be very good at staying level when other people's emotions are very high. Same with ER docs and nurses and people who admit people in the ER, right? In an emergency room at a hospital. A lot of times emotions are very high. A lot of times people come in screaming and yelling. In fact, I had a client tell me just the other day that when they went into a ER recently, two gentlemen were trying to get admitted and basically screaming and yelling at the person admitting them that they needed a certain kind of drug. And the person admitting them was saying, that's not something we can give you here at the ER. You're going to have to go visit with your doctor and get a prescription. And both these two individuals were obviously abusers of or what looked like they were abusers of prescription drugs, because they were basically demanding and yelling and screaming and swearing that they needed these drugs right away, and that this is a doctor, this is a hospital, they have to give it to them. So in that situation, the person admitting those individuals that were just being belligerent and loud and disrespectful and yelling and screaming and not taking no for an answer, obviously they could allow emotions to get the best of them and respond in a poor way. Instead, this individual very calmly helped them understand what the situation was. They didn't react on par with how crazy the situation was. They took it down, and they were the calm and level-headed voice, okay, behind the desk, and basically said, no, can I help you get in touch with your doctor? Can I help you get to a facility where you can potentially be looked at and treated and get whatever it is, whatever kind of medication you truly need? And in the end, they had to be escorted out. But that situation could have, it never helps the situation to escalate with somebody who's escalated from an emotional standpoint, right? It does potentially help. Doesn't always cure the situation, but it does potentially help if we stay calm. Always makes our communication a little more effective if we're calm. So this author gives a lot of different ideas for how to do this. In fact, this is a WikiHow article, right? So there's a lot of different tips, a lot of different, basically coping skills for our emotions. Okay, that's what I would call the title of this article: coping skills for emotions. So when we feel our emotions running high or kind of derailing us, our emotions are derailing us, there's lots of different methods that we can look at. And once again, these would be the methods that somebody, if you were going to therapy, right, for anxiety or for depression, they would walk you through these methods. They would talk about how you stop and refocus, how you concentrate on your breathing and muscle relaxation, how you think through and visualize different situations like we talked about earlier. You visualize the circumstances that you'll be in so that the emotions won't get the best of you. They won't, nothing will take you by surprise, or at least shouldn't take you by surprise if you've really visualized, the full situation in your mind before you get into it, and different scenarios that could potentially take place. But there are a lot of other things. This article has a wealth of different tips and tricks for coping with emotions. And I think it's a great, you could go through it and maybe just pick out one or two different coping skills that could really help you out, that really could be used just in a practical way on a day-to-day basis, if needed, to help you communicate in a more calm and level way with others, right? And not allow emotions to get in the way of how you're communicating and what you need to communicate. So, interesting article. I'd encourage you to read through it, and great information when it comes to trying to control emotions. Because one of the things, and I learned this years ago, I used to be on a debate team in high school. This is 20 plus years ago, and I considered myself pretty good. I would debate somebody else, and I would cross-examine them. So it was policy debate, right, back in the day. And one of the reasons why I was fairly effective at debate was not because I was the best speaker. There were better speakers, right? But I had a skill set that was kind of unique. When we'd cross-examine somebody, when I would cross-examine somebody, I could ask questions to get under their skin. Or even if somebody was cross-examining me, I could answer the questions in a way that would get under their skin. And if I could make them emotional, if I could make them angry, if I could make them feel frustrated in any way, it gave me the upper hand. Because the judges, we were always judged, right? The judges will many times give the benefit of the doubt to the folks who are calm. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's not somebody was more skilled than the other. It just comes down to, once again, our humanity. Most of us as human beings, if we see somebody being more calm than someone else and someone losing their cool, and you can see this in presidential debates in years past, in different debates that you watch, political debates. People who stay calm are usually awarded, more credibility than the people who don't. We just naturally think in our minds, and this is subconscious, right? We don't even need to think it consciously, but subconsciously, we interpret somebody being calm as more confident, more honest, more credible, more trustworthy than somebody who's getting heated up in the moment, right? And the irony of that is you might have somebody that is getting hot in the moment just because they can't control their emotion, not because they're being dishonest or they're not credible or any of those things. Those are all things that we attach to that. And it doesn't have to be a reality. It might not be a reality at all, but just as a general rule, somebody that can stay calm is more credible, confident, and trustworthy. And so that's something important for us to understand as individuals, right? When we're communicating, that if we can stay calm, which is difficult to do in many circumstances, but if we can stay calm, we'll come across more trustworthy to whomever we're communicating with. And without coming across trustworthy, we won't have effective communication, right? All right. So real quick, just wanted to talk briefly about professionalism, how it relates to communication. And then if we have a chance here in a minute, we'll talk about security just briefly. So professionalism is obviously important in the workplace, right? So now we're going beyond, family relationships and friend relationships that we have. When we're in a workplace, and each workplace is a little bit different as far as dress code, as far as, how we act at our workplace, but there's a certain level of professionalism that needs to happen in every single workplace. And I don't, some people will say, well, my boss, he's pretty laid back. He seems to not care, that we kind of goof around. And my response to that is, well, at some point he will care, because if it affects productivity, if it affects profitability, at some point his job will be on the line because of your actions. And if his job's on the line, you're going to lose your job. And it doesn't matter how lax he was or she was before, that can change just so quickly, right? So we never want to be caught in a situation that we're the least professional of a group, right? Because there's good potential for us to be the one to let go, that gets let go at some point if we're the least professional of our team. But that's not really how we gauge it, right? We always just want to keep a certain level of professionalism, and when we communicate, there's a certain level of professionalism. If we communicate via text or via email or Snapchat or whatever it is, there is a level of professionalism within our communication at our workplace that is so important. Okay, it's not the time or place to have funny conversations with each other, even if we're good friends and colleagues. Face to face, maybe. Over text or over different forms of technology, probably not, because so many times it opens the door for a miscommunication to occur, or for that information, or for that email, or for that instant message, or whatever it is that we used, whatever form or device that we used, for that information to flow into the wrong hands, right? So if we're having a one-on-one conversation with someone in their office, and we're joking around a little bit, that might be okay, but it's hardly ever okay, and probably never okay, to do that same thing via text, email, you know, instant message, whatever devices and technology you're using. And the reason for that, like I say, is, once again, not as easy to understand somebody's perspective, not as easy to understand their reaction. And so you can get yourself in trouble and really have some miscommunication and communication breakdowns if we don't keep a certain level of professionalism with our work communication. Okay. Lose the professionalism when you're talking to your best buddy from high school, right? But when it comes to a workplace, we got to be careful about it, and don't ever be, once again, the person communicating it in a workplace environment at the lowest professionalism level of anybody else, right? If you lack professionalism, that could become a reason for you to not get a promotion, be let go at some point first, even for no apparent reason, but that might have been it. So we need to always be thinking, when it comes to our professionalism, how could this information be used? How is it going to be used? How can I get to the point of what I'm trying to communicate because of how it's being used? So kind of think through these things, right? Don't talk out loud. Don't think out loud, excuse me, when it comes to communicating professionally. And then how could whatever I'm potentially saying or communicating be interpreted, right? We want to be careful. This is an environment where we've got to be PC, right? We joke about, and sometimes, really are negative about the fact that our world is becoming so PC, politically correct, right, all the time. But a workplace environment is somewhere where it absolutely is necessary and justified to be as PC as you can possibly be. Okay. We don't want anybody to interpret what we say as offensive. We just don't. And some people say, well, there are some people that are always going to be offended. It doesn't matter what you say. But not really. If you connect with that person, if you have an open mind, and if you don't say anything that might potentially be offensive to that person, and if you ever even get on the borderline of doing it, you immediately apologize and immediately try to clarify that it wasn't intended, you'll be okay. But if you give up trying to be PC, right, and trying to be professional, and you let a lot of things slide because you think, well, that person's just going to be offended at whatever I do, it doesn't matter, that is grounds at some point for you, once again, to no longer be at that workplace. Okay. Even if you were part of the crowd that, all was kind of non-PC with one individual, Well, you could be outed at some point, even if it wasn't you, even if you're not the one actually doing it, if you're just participating in it. It could get you in trouble. Off-color jokes, things that are borderline racist, sexist, you know, you know, ageism, comments about age, those kind of things just can't happen at a workplace, or you're asking for a potential of being misinterpreted, having somebody be offended, and that's a quick way to get let go. Okay. So be very careful at a workplace. It's not that we can't have fun, right? We can have a great time, but be careful how you do it, and keep a level of professionalism. And then make sure that you're careful about which form of communication you use. We talked about a little bit about last week about email and instant message and texting. All these are great forms of communication for different purposes, right? And so whenever we have a message that we need to communicate to somebody else, we should just quickly assess which form of communication it really would be the best, right? So if I'm trying to communicate feelings in a difficult situation with a client in my business, so they're upset about the market, they're frustrated about their plan, they're frustrated about the market going down, and they're voicing that frustration. Email is a very difficult place to have that conversation, right? Even though they might have emailed me, I probably need to call them back or invite them to come in and talk about it face to face, because it's very difficult to calm someone and not be misinterpreted in how I'm doing it via email, instant message, or text. If I'm just trying to set up an appointment with a client, that's a lot easier to do via text or email than it is with a phone call, right? And most of my clients will appreciate me just using a text or an email instead of having them have to answer a phone call. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, and maybe some old school, there'll be some old school people here in the class that are like, well, I prefer to have somebody call me, even if it's just for an appointment. But most people, and it's becoming more and more commonly this way, right? As texting and forms of social media and other things become more and more prevalent, it's becoming more and more respectful to somebody actually to just text or email them about an appointment as opposed to interrupting their day with a phone call, right? So there's different modes of communication for different purposes, right? We just need to be careful about which mode we're using and why. So just something to think about. And then finally, I just wanted to mention the security issue. So when it comes to communication, we're talking about effective communication in a work environment, or even with friends and family. We always need to be careful about security and security issues. So if there's something private, personal information, something that's private, it always needs to happen securely, either by email or something that can be encrypted, or on a phone call or face to face, where you're not going to have people eavesdrop. Like, an example is you go to lunch with somebody and you start talking about somebody else, and there are tables of people all around you. We got to be careful about that, right? We got to be careful if we email somebody a date of birth or a full name of somebody else. Those kinds of things, most of us would feel uncomfortable if we thought it was going through the public email system. That can be hacked, right? So make sure you've got an encryption process if in your work environment you're having to email personal information. But just communicating in general, we always just need to be aware of security issues, the potential for security problems and breaches, but also just privacy, right? We just need to be careful about when we communicate, to make sure that the communications that we have keep things that should be private. And that applies to every mode of communication that we have. If we start talking about something that becomes personal, or becomes information that shouldn't be that we wouldn't want out there in the public, well, then we need to be careful that we don't have people that can hear what our conversation is, that could eavesdrop on what we're saying, and then also that could potentially hack what we're communicating. Okay, so just we're in a new world, a lot of identity fraud and a lot of security issues nowadays. So especially in a work environment, we got to be so careful, to make sure everything's done securely, privately, to respect people's privacy. All right, that's all I've got for tonight. Hope you were able to pick up a few good points about communication this evening. Enjoy those articles. Hope we have another good week on the discussion board, and we'll visit with you all next week. Have a good night.